Well, I have to say, I first did this presentation 5 or 6 years ago. But when I started researching to kind of update it and make sure that it was right on the edge, I was blown away at how much more research is out there now on sunshine and light therapy. I mean, I felt like I was drinking from a fire hydrant. There was so much out there, and it was really challenging for me to focus in and narrow down. So what I'm going to share with you is really just a little thumbnail sketch of what the reality is when it comes to using sunlight for your health. So let's dive in. We're going to talk about sunlight as it pertains to epigenetics and our actual health or disease outcomes in our life. So we've been talking about these laws of health, and there are 8 of them that we're going to talk about. And we're now on number 4, so this is the halfway point with sunshine. So that's what we're talking about tonight. According to a study done in the 90s by the Environmental Protection Agency, most Americans spend about 93% of their time indoors. Now, this study was done in the 90s. Think about kids today. When I was a kid, I got home from school, I had chores, I was outside and doing stuff, playing with my horses until it was time to come in for supper, you know. And I did spend time. We had recess and PE and all that, and then on days off, on the weekends, I was out there as much as I could be. I love being outside. But kids these days, they have their video games, their phones, and they go from the house to the bus, to the school, to the bus, to the house. And they spend very little time outside. We're going to talk tonight about why that is a problem. Then we also changed our light bulbs to fluorescents, LEDs, and all this. These are actually not as helpful for us as the old-fashioned incandescent high-energy light bulbs. And I'm going to show you one of those tonight, which is actually extremely beneficial. In the beginning, God created light. He created the moon, the sun, the stars, all these things, and each had their purpose. Of course, the sun ruled the day. And when God created Adam and Eve, where did He put them? In a house, right? No. He put them in the Garden of Eden. Now, I don't read anything in Genesis about Him telling them to build a house. The temperature was perfect. They didn't get chilled. So I'm assuming that Adam and Eve lived an entirely outdoor life. And we're going to find out tonight why that is so amazing. What we're talking about, there's a couple of names for it. One of them is heliotherapy. Helio stands for light or the sun. Another is photobiomodulation. Now, when a scientist gets hold of some of God's easy remedies, they like to put these big tags on them. Photobiomodulation, if you break it down, photo means light, bio means life, modulation means to change. So they're actually changing your life using light. And it's not just sunlight that scientists are using right now, but that's primarily what I want to focus on tonight, because sunlight is drug-free, sunlight is non-invasive, it is non-toxic. If used properly, there's no side effects, and it's free. How much better can you get than that? I especially love the free part. So photons, which come from the sun, the light that comes from the sun, this is photons. And these are like little packets of light energy. And when that light energy hits the skin absorbs it. And ultimately it goes into the mitochondria. You remember the anatomy and stuff from high school, elementary school, and all that. We have inside of our cells, we have little mitochondria. So the red blood cells don't have any. So the mitochondria in the cell actually absorbs the light when we expose our skin to sunlight. What does that do? It causes an enzyme called cytochrome C oxidase to be increased. That enzyme, cytochrome C oxidase, increases energy production within the mitochondria. The mitochondria are the little powerhouses. They're like your battery inside your cell. When the sunlight hits your skin, goes in, hits the mitochondria, this enzyme is increased, and that enzyme triggers the production of ATP, which is what our cells use as energy and also to repair damage. And non-infrared light, that NIR stands for non-infrared light. We're going to talk about some of the different parts of light tonight, and this is one of them. That non-infrared light, though, when it gets into the mitochondria, it causes the mitochondria to upregulate the production of melatonin. Who knows what melatonin is? That's your sleep hormone. That's the hormone that is increased towards the evening to make you sleepy. Okay, we're going to talk about ways to increase that naturally. I learned some things in my research with this that just blew my socks off. I was so happy when I learned these things. So if we don't have enough non-infrared light, it can actually lead to mitochondrial dysfunction. In other words, our cells don't work right. The mitochondria within our cells don't work right. This non-infrared light also increases the production of something called nitric oxide. We're going to learn more about nitric oxide tonight, but one of the main things that nitric oxide does is increase your circulation. So when you're out there in the sun, you're increasing your circulation. It dilates blood vessels, which we'll see in just a little bit, so it actually can help lower blood pressure. Here's some more benefits of the sunlight. I have told Kaylin, with my mold toxicity and my Rocky Mountain spotted fever, I've had a lot of pain, just achy joints, muscles, just deep, deep pain. Sometimes so bad I really didn't want to get up and do anything. But when I go out and lay in the sun, I feel like a little battery, just a little solar panel, I guess, soaking up the energy. It completely takes my pain away, like nothing else. If I'm hurting and I go lay in the sun, pain is history, okay? It reduces inflammation. It increases range of motion. So if you're limited, get out in the sun. It causes general healing in the body. And it also increases wound healing, including issues like psoriasis. So if you know somebody that has eczema, psoriasis, any kind of wound, even acne is benefited from exposure to sunlight. I think I have it somewhere later on in the talk, but I'm going to go ahead and share this personal experience now. When I worked with Dr. Agatha Thrash years ago, we did a breast implant removal on a lady who had developed a toxicity to those things. And it was a very complicated removal because her body had created like sacs, like cystic sacs around these things to try to seal it off. And so we had to do a lot of work to get those things freed from her tissue and get them removed. And so there was quite an incision on both sides. And when we finished with the surgery, I took the lady home with me to help her recover because I knew she was going to be sore. One of the things that I did with her was take her out in a private area and just expose her wounds to the sunlight. I kid you not, I have never in my entire nursing career seen any wound heal as fast as that lady healed. It was amazing. It was totally amazing. Okay, let's talk about our body clock just a little bit. All active processes within our bodies take place when there's light outside. All reparative, whenever our bodies are actually fixing things, restorative properties that take place in the body take place when it's dark. Okay? So if we're giving our body signals in the evening, screen time is blue light. We'll talk about that more in just a minute. But that signals the brain that it's time to wake up. So if you're on these devices in the evenings, you're goofing up your circadian rhythm and telling your body lies, basically. because blue light from screens in the evening gives our bodies the time cue that is incorrect. The best time to get that blue light is actually most powerful right at dawn, right when the sun's coming up. That is the best time to go out and expose your eyes to light, is right at dawn, at when the sun is just coming up. That blue light is very strong. Every morning that I can, I try to get out there right at dawn, and then after I feed Kaylin and get breakfast done and everything, then I go out for a walk and I'm looking at the horizon, because it gets that blue light into my body. And I really typically don't have any problems falling asleep. It really is helping to reset my body clock. Okay, that is from this lady. She's got a weird name there. Anyway, we're talking about epigenetics as it relates to the use of sunlight in our body. And you remember epigenetics, that's those switches that turn disease on, or they can turn disease off. And these epigenetic switches can be turned off and on by our dietary choices and our lifestyle choices. Okay, so these are very important things. So let's talk now a little bit about sunlight and epigenetics. Can sunlight actually alter my genetics, my genes? Can it actually turn off those switches for disease in my body? Yes, it can. And most of the time whenever I talk to people about this, they're like, sunlight causes skin cancer, it's going to give me wrinkles. Yes, if. And we're going to talk about that if now, okay? That's what people tell me. Let's investigate. Here is a study that showed that, and this is a fancy word, lipid peroxidation. Basically what that means, who's ever smelled a rancid cooking oil? It stinks, doesn't it? Have you ever smelled rancid Crisco, or not Crisco, what's the one that, there's a real popular one that, what's the real popular vegetable oil? Wesson cooking oil. That's predominantly soybean oil. I'm going to show you a very interesting graph. I think it's the next slide after the next one. Okay, so this right here, this decomposition of these cooking oils in our body is primarily responsible for the increase in melanomas since the 50s and the 40s and the 50s, because that's when those oils began to be used more. Let me show you a graph. If you look at this graph, the 1940s, 1950s, melanoma was kind of not that predominant. But we hear of it all the time now. People, you know, a very dear friend of mine died from melanoma years ago. So you see this spike where it almost just goes straight up, starting probably the late 60s and so. So this is melanoma, all right? Now, remember this pattern, this graph. This right here is the increase of the use of these vegetable oils, particularly soybean oil, which is predominantly the oil that's in these cooking oils. You see what that graph does? This is in the 1960s, late 60s right here. Look what happens. Does that look like this previous graph? Compare these charts. You see that? Okay, very, very close correlation there. And that's what the study that I just showed you back here, this study showed that graph, okay? So if we're eating these vegetable oils that are going to go rancid, and they go rancid even if they're in the foods that you cooked with using the oil. Okay, here is another study that shows a correlation between red meat consumption and melanoma. Very clear connection between red meat consumption and melanoma, particularly if you expose your skin to sunlight. Here's another one. This study, and then there's the links for the studies there. Sunlight and cancer. Cancer is, the risk of cancer, especially melanoma, is reduced if you are eating dietary antioxidants found in fresh fruits and vegetables. Okay, so yes, exposing the skin to sunlight can cause skin cancer if your diet is favorable. But if you're eating a diet high in fresh fruits and vegetables, you're getting those antioxidants in that are actually protective. Let me also point out another thing, and that is that melanoma typically occurs in areas of skin that are covered. Most of the time it's, the back, some place on the body that's covered. It's not the face always. It's not the arms. More predominantly, it's on the areas of our body that are covered. So let's talk about wrinkles a little bit. Skin that, you remember the telomeres we talked about in the last few classes? We talked about telomeres. Who remembers what telomeres are? Anybody? Kaylin, you can't answer. I'm going to give you a hint. Remember? Who remembers? I lost my thingy here. Hang on just a second. So, Delilah remembers. It's the repetition of genetic material found at the end of chromosomes. And if you remember last week, we said that doctors can actually go in, scientists can go in, look at the length of the telomeres, or the repetition of genetic material on the ends of your chromosomes, and tell you how much time you have left on Earth. Okay? We also discovered that every one of the things that we have discussed so far in this class lengthens those telomeres. So if you want to lengthen your lifespan, that's what we're trying to tell you how to do. Okay? So what happens, skin that is exposed repeatedly to the sun has to repair. I think it's 5 sunburns. If you have 5 sunburns in your life before a certain age, you have just like a 100% increase in the risk of skin cancer later in life. Coming up in the South, I've been fried. So I'm very thankful that I've been on a good diet since my early 20s. That's when I became vegetarian, was in my early 20s. So at any rate, I'm not suggesting that anyone here looks like this, but if your skin is repeatedly exposed to sunlight, it has to repair more if you're on the kind of diet that we discussed. But if you're on a diet that is high in those fresh fruits and vegetables, you are eating the antioxidants that you need to lengthen those telomeres so that your skin doesn't look like this. This right here is an amazing picture to me. This man had been a truck driver. He's retired here. He'd been a truck driver for decades. You see there the left side of his face facing the window. Look at the difference. UVA, ultraviolet light A, comes through glass. It goes deeper into the body, and it's even more damaging because you can see the difference between the sides of his face. That is phenomenal to me. It is so obvious. And so don't think that I'm driving in my car so I'm getting some good sunlight. You're getting the harmful rays that go deeper and do more damage like this. Okay? We'll talk more about UVA and UVB in just a little bit. So these telomeres are responsible for these concerns like wrinkles and sagging skin and all that. But it's if you have the diet and the lifestyle that we've been talking about. Okay? So the telomeres, we talked about this, when your chromosomes fray, your cells don't reproduce. So but the telomeres are also involved in skin repair and stuff. All right, and then there's telomerase. Telomerase, we talked about a little bit last week. That is an enzyme that the body can produce as a response to things like drinking enough water, having good nutrition, exposing the skin to sunlight, getting exercise. All of these things stimulate the production of this enzyme called telomerase that makes your telomeres longer and turns off those genetic switches for disease. Okay? Part of the sun's protective power is that its ultraviolet rays turn on several processes in the body, not just one, that lengthen these telomeres. And that increases the longevity of the chromosomes themselves and ultimately of your life. Sunshine causes also the body to release nitric oxide. We talked about that in just a few minutes ago. And nitric oxide also activates this telomerase, which lengthens the telomeres. Sunlight also encourages the skin to make melanin. Melanin is that pigment that we get, the dark tan. When we're out in the sun and we tan instead of burn, your face is tan. Kaylin's face is tan. Your face is tan. This tanning, and I hope mine's tan because I'm trying to get lots and lots of sunshine. So that melanin actually is a natural sunscreen. So if you expose your skin to the sunlight judiciously, like 15, 20 minutes a day, if you're laying out, lay on one side for 10 minutes, flip over, do the other side. If you're doing that and slowly causing your skin to darken, that is your sunscreen. It actually acts better than sunscreen, and we'll find out why in just a minute. And there's also a direct connection between how much melanin or the pigment that you have in your skin and the length of your telomeres. So the more tan you are, the longer your telomeres, because you're getting that sunlight. If you're pale and pasty looking, because you're inside all the time, you're not lengthening those, producing that telomerase to lengthen your telomeres. That we talked about this, that the melanin is what darkens the skin. But another interesting point is people of Asian descent, African Americans, Middle Eastern, Indians, they have darker skin pigment. They have more melanin already in their skin, so they have a natural sunscreen. So it can take them up to 10 times, they may need up to 10 times more sunlight exposure to get the same benefit that people with a fair skin complexion. Here is a chart that shows just a little bit of the light spectrums. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail with this, but the visible light is the ones that we think about most because that's the ones we actually can visibly see. But the infrared, that's the heat that we feel from the sun. And then there's also ultraviolet, or it's beyond violet. We can't see that. We can't see the UVB. We can't see the UVA. So, but you can see, if you look at the lower corner there, you can see UVA, that's this one right here. You can see how much more it penetrates the skin than UVB. And that's why, you remember the man that had the wrinkles on one side? That's why, because for decades he was sitting there getting blasted on that side of his face. Okay, this actually shows a little bit of how, the different depths of the different spectrums of light, the different depths that they can go. Now this, the infrared light can actually penetrate bone. They're actually doing light therapies now where people who have had traumatic brain injuries, people who have Alzheimer's, people who've had strokes, they're using this, particularly red light therapy, near infrared, far infrared, whatever. They're using this infrared light to help people recover, and they're having phenomenal results. And I believe you can do the same thing with sun exposure. I don't think it has to be a fancy device. So for therapeutic purposes, we're looking at basically 3 of these types of light. Blue light, which is very good for skin infections and stuff like that. That's the one that we need in the morning. That's the one that tells our body it's time to start the day. It kind of sets our circadian rhythm and helps us to know this is morning. The next is red, And that is good because it goes a little deeper. It's good for ligaments, tendons, muscles, collagen regeneration. This is going to go about 2.5 to 5 centimeters. And it's also good to expose yourself to these lights. What happens when you watch a sunset? What color is it? It's more reddish, orangey glow. How does that make you feel? My glasses are fogging up. Is it kind of relaxing, that color? Think about a campfire. Campfires are usually low, and when you have light coming up from below you in the evening and it's of that color, it actually triggers the brain to like, okay, it's time to go to sleep now. So these different light spectrums have a lot to do with our wake-sleep cycles. That's why it's so detrimental to be on these screens in the evening. I just learned how to set mine, and it's changed to night mode that gives it more of a yellow hue. You kind of see? Well, I'm 58, so I'm not as young as some folks that may be watching this, so I just figured that out. So I'm not the techiest chick on the block. And then there's infrared light, which goes, again, much deeper. When you expose, because our brain, if you remember, we've showed you pictures of the brain before, it's got all these dips and grooves in the brain. It's not a smooth surface. When you expose the brain to infrared light, with the cerebral spinal fluid and everything in there, that kind of focuses the light into those little crevices, and it gets the light deep into the brain. So if you have someone who has injury there, this infrared light can actually penetrate and help that to heal. Same with sinuses. If you have someone who has chronic sinusitis or issues in the sinuses, and you expose them to this infrared light, it can help to heal infections that are very deep into the body. I just think that's fascinating. I praise the Lord for the sun. Okay, again, we talked about the nitric oxide and how it dilates the blood vessels, increases circulation. So what's that going to do? You open the blood vessels, speed up the blood flow. What's that going to do to your blood pressure? It's going to lower your blood pressure. So you want a natural blood pressure pill? Get out in the sunlight. Okay? Now again, we're not talking about burning, we're just talking about a gradual tanning of the skin to increase that melanin production. Let's talk a little bit more about melatonin. We're going to spend a few minutes on this. As sunlight enters our eyes, it stimulates the pineal gland, which is this is sometimes referred to as our third eye. It signals this gland to produce melatonin and tells it exactly how much to make. Now when we look at sunrise and sunset, it stimulates the body to produce this. And again, this helps to regulate our circadian rhythm. By the way, did you know we have not only a 24-hour rhythm in our body, but we have something called a circadian, I think is how you say it, circadian rhythm, which is a weekly cycle. We have a weekly cycle in our body. That's the way God made us. So we used to think that the majority of our melatonin came from the pineal gland. But now we know that only 5% of, my glasses keep fogging up, only 5% of our body's melatonin comes from the pineal gland. Here's some more. Does anybody remember us talking about an antioxidant called glutathione? Okay, I see several heads nodding. Melatonin is a more powerful antioxidant than glutathione. In fact, melatonin helps to upregulate glutathione. So it's a very, very important hormone in the body. And 95% of it comes from our cells. It's actually produced in the cells as a result of exposure to near infrared light. Anybody in here having trouble sleeping? you probably are not making enough melatonin in your cells. But melatonin has more purpose in the body than just regulating the wake-sleep cycle. Melatonin actually is like our automotive coolant, the radiator fluid in our bodies. It actually helps to cool the cell and keep it, because it produces chemical heat. It helps to reduce that and keep it from overheating and damaging itself. So that near-infrared light is the most deeply penetrating light. You remember I said that it could penetrate up to 8 centimeters. So it's going to get into the cells deep within our body and help them to produce this melatonin. Now you say, well, I'll just take more melatonin then as a supplement. It doesn't work that way. That melatonin goes into your bloodstream. It doesn't go intracellular. So it's not going to do the same. To get this melatonin, I think I said melatonin, you have to go out into the sun. You have to expose your skin to light. And the other thing that's important, besides exposing your skin to light, the near-infrared light particularly, is we need to sleep in a dark environment. We have so many artificial lights these days, night lights on the street lights. We got lights everywhere. I know people who sleep with their phone right next to their bed. Please don't do that. That's not good for your brain. You're frying your brain. So there's lights everywhere. We need to sleep in darkness, because if you expose your eyes to light when it's dark, you're triggering your body to wake up, to increase cortisol levels, and it's daytime. Now, I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier. If we used still the incandescent light bulbs, we would be naturally getting, even indoors, some of this near-infrared light. Do you remember those things get really hot? I mean, you could hardly touch those old-fashioned light bulbs. And so that actually gave us some benefit to helping us produce this melatonin. What about serotonin? Serotonin is kind of the mood dial hormone. It's the happy hormone, kind of helps to elevate your mood a little bit. When in the wintertime, when we don't get as much sunlight, serotonin levels tend to be lower. And even in healthy people, by the end of winter, typically their serotonin levels are even lower. And when we are exposed to sunlight, it helps to increase. Have you ever noticed that when you go outside, you get out in the sun, look at kids. They're going ballistic in the house. You let them go outside, they're calm. Serotonin levels are going up. And serotonin is actually a precursor to melatonin. And here's some more beneficial effects of this near-infrared radiation. I mentioned treating skin diseases, like psoriasis, vitiligo, dermatitis, scleroderma. It promotes wound healing. I used to use these sun lamps when I worked in pediatrics. I worked in newborn nursery, and we would put the little newborns that got jaundice under the lights. Do the same thing with sunlight, just put them out in the sunlight. Don't let them fry out there, but okay. Tuberculosis. One study was able to show that an astonishing 100% resolution rate by treating tuberculosis patients with 10,000 units of vitamin D per day. Now, up here, when I first married Kaylin, almost 12 years ago, I think your vitamin D level was in the single digits, wasn't it? It was extremely low. It took me quite a while to get his levels up with supplementation. And if you're taking a vitamin D supplement and you can't get your levels up, it could be that you're magnesium deficient, because they need to You have to have enough magnesium to get your vitamin D levels up. So again, people with darker skin tones tend to have lower levels. Caleb was outside all the time, but he was covered. Okay, he had to, with the job that he had to wear long sleeves, pants, shoes. The only thing exposed was his hands and his head. You know, and up here we'll talk. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but we'll talk a little bit about where you live and your ability to make vitamin D. So, since the invention of sunscreens, melanoma cancers have increased. So we're told that sunscreens are supposed to protect us from skin cancer, but quite the opposite is actually the case. Okay, new research shows that a lack of vitamin D can trigger deadly skin cancers, depression, bone loss, heart disease, and more. Now, some people believe that if you go lay out in the sun and then you go take a shower, that you wash off all the benefits, you know, of vitamin D production. That's not true, actually, because vitamin D is made a little bit deeper than the surface of the skin. And that's according to Dr. Michael Hollick, who is one of the leading experts on vitamin D and light therapies. You remember last week we talked a little bit about structured water and how there's structured water inside the cells. When you expose your skin to sun, you're actually increasing the structured water within the body. So that is amazing to me, and that having that increase of structured water increases the energy production within the cell. So that's connecting last week's law of health with this law of health. You know, they go hand in hand. It's not just one. A study by Georgia Health Sciences University found adults taking 2,000 international units of vitamin D daily for a month increased telomerase production, look at that, by 19% compared to a placebo group. So you can lengthen your life, and I'm going to show you a doctor here in just a minute that has done some amazing stuff. Also, according to this Dr. Hollick, vitamin D that you produce in your body as a result of sun exposure lasts twice as long in your body as vitamin D that you take orally. So when I was really at my worst with Rocky Mountain spotted fever, I was sunbathing and really trying hard to cut my titers down and get this thing out of my body. And I was sunbathing almost every day because we were down south. I was not taking any supplementation. I got my vitamin D level up to 147 just by sunbathing. Now, most doctors would flip out if they saw that number, but our bodies are intelligent. Our bodies know what we need. And at the time, my body was fighting some very serious issues. And so it made all this vitamin D. And the naturopath that we had gone, well, he was actually an osteopath that we went to that tested me and found this. He said, now if you talk to somebody else, they're going to freak out if you tell them this. He said, but you don't worry about that. That's excellent. Most doctors think that a level of 30 is fine, but it's really not enough. And we'll talk about in a minute. During the COVID pandemic, people who had higher vitamin D levels had better outcomes when they got COVID. In fact, Mom, didn't they give you vitamin D in the hospital when you had COVID? Okay. A study involving 2,000 twins determined that genetics do not affect telomere length. It's your vitamin D levels, your dietary choices, and all these things. Researchers reported those with the highest levels of vitamin D had telomeres 5 years younger. So they compared twins. One would have this lifestyle, one would maybe have a more healthy lifestyle. The one with the more healthy lifestyle, their telomeres were 5 years younger than their identical twin. That's amazing. That is what you call turning off the epigenetic switches for disease. And you and I can do that. So our age is not determined by the number of candles on our birthday cake or by our genetics. It's determined by our lifestyle. But we do, we're not able to make as much vitamin D as we age. So it does take more effort. Now I want you just to look at this picture and think about the diet and lifestyle of this lady. Think about the things that we've talked about so far, and I want you to tell me what's wrong with this picture. So shout out, don't be bashful. What's wrong with this picture?
Fast food.
What's that?
Fast food.
Fast food. That's a diet factor, right?
Eating in a hurry.
She's eating in a hurry. So she's probably super stressed, right? Okay, what else?
Sugar.
What's that?
Stuff pop there, isn't that a
Soda pop?
That's corn syrup. That's not good.
High fructose corn syrup. Yes, that's cancer food, right? Sugar, very much cancer food. What else do you see? She's driving a vehicle. What have we talked about tonight? She's probably thinking, okay, I'm getting a little sunlight through the glass. UVA, what's her skin going to look like? Okay, we're going to find out why that's important in just a minute. So our skin has a good capacity for vitamin D production and supplies the body with 80 to 100% of its requirements of vitamin D if you're getting enough UVB radiation. It's the UVB that you must have in order to produce vitamin D. Hold that thought. UVB. We're going to come back to that. So here's just a few signs of vitamin D deficiency: diabetes, heart disease, cancer, osteomalacia, multiple sclerosis, depression, candida, weak bones and teeth, hormone imbalances, chronic pain, fractures, gut disorders like constipation and diarrhea, excessive sweating, depression, I think I already said that one, weakness, weight gain, headaches, restless sleep. Anybody in here think they're vitamin D deficient? Maybe. Okay, so regular sunlight exposure has been shown to lower blood glucose levels. They're actually using specific light therapies to treat diabetes, particularly diabetes type 2. If there is obesity, according to Dr. Peter Attia, vitamin D sequesters or hides in fat cells. So the more fat cells you have, the lower your circulating vitamin D. It needs to be not in the fat cells, it needs to be in the blood circulation. Okay? Renal failure. Patients who have kidney problems are typically chronically vitamin D deficient. I'm going to show you a doctor here in just a minute that's done some amazing stuff, okay? Calcium. Vitamin D is essential to the absorption of calcium and other minerals as well. And it's also important, if you're taking a vitamin D supplement, you need to take D3 with K2. It's important to take those two together. They work together. Okay. I don't want to go on too long. A study of more than 2,000 women has found that those with higher vitamin D levels showed fewer aging-related changes in their DNA. So there's the epigenetic switches for disease. When we have age-related changes in the DNA, that's things like little breaks, what they call SNPs, SNPs, it's little polymorphisms or defects on our DNA that we can have, as well as lowered inflammatory responses. Here's the slide I've been wanting to get to. UVA and UVB. We concern ourselves with basically these two types of rays. UVA, which does not produce vitamin D, that's the one that does penetrate glass, and UVB, which is the one that does produce vitamin D. Sunscreen typically blocks UVB. So when you have sunscreen on your skin when you're outside, you are not making vitamin D because you are blocking the UVB rays. typically the UVA rays are still getting through and they penetrate more deeply. So if you are going to use a sunscreen, make sure that you get one that does block both UVA and UVB, because they don't all do that. Okay. All right. So glass also blocks UVB. I think we mentioned that just a little bit ago. All right. In a British medical journal called The Lancet, back in 2004, they said it has long been realized that indoor workers have an increased risk for melanoma. Indoor workers compared with those who work outdoors. What are the ones who work outdoors always exposed to?
Sunlight.
But which ones have the highest rate of melanoma? The ones who work indoors. Okay? This indicates ultraviolet radiation is in some way protective. This was in The Lancet, one of the most prestigious medical journals. Okay? 1 million die per year and an estimated 1 billion worldwide do not have enough vitamin D, largely due to inadequate sun exposure. If you are, even when it's cold, we're going to talk about the UVB and producing vitamin D in just a minute, but even if it's cold and you're exposed to sunlight, you're still getting UVA. So you still need to protect yourself with a hat and, covering and all that, especially if you're at altitude, because the higher the altitude, and if there's snow, it's even reflecting more of that onto you. UVAs, I think this is kind of what we just talked about, but here's the thing. Most tanning beds produce UVA predominantly. They may have some UVB. Most of them are predominantly UVA. Here's a cartoon that I like. Select a cancer, basal, squamous, or melanoma. So I'm not really a proponent of tanning beds. I like sunlight. There are some now, they think that they've improved the design of these, but anyway, it's becoming increasingly clear from all the research that vitamin D deficiency may be the most common denominator behind our most devastating modern degenerating diseases. Do you know how the body makes vitamin D what it does? When sunlight hits the skin, vitamin D is produced by a form of cholesterol in the skin. So if your cholesterol is too high, go out into the sunlight. It helps to lower blood cholesterol. Okay? In fact, vitamin D deficiency may be the root cause behind many degenerative diseases, that correcting this deficiency could very well devastate the for-profit sick care industry that we call hospitals today. So it's that potent. And this right here, this guy is called, it's Dr. Leslie Ray Matthews. I feel a little bit of affinity here, not because I know him, I don't. But he worked at Grady Hospital in Atlanta, Georgia, and that's where I did some of my nursing clinicals when I was becoming an RN. So I've actually been to this hospital where he became famous for something that he did. He was a surgeon. I don't know if you know anything about Grady Hospital, but it's the city hospital. So it gets all the rough stuff, the gang fights, that kind of stuff. These were the kind of people that he was exposed to, plus car accidents and other stuff too, not just gang stuff. But my point is, he saw some really serious stuff. Okay, most patients, he said, came in with he always tested their vitamin D level. Most of them had a mean level of around 15, which is in the basement. Okay, so what he did, all of his patients, he put on a supplement regimen that included vitamin D, omega-3 fatty acids, progesterone, and glutamine, because a lot of his patients were brain injuries. His mortality rate dropped 42% with critically ill patients for all traumas with his vitamin D protocol. Dr. Matthews is now writing a manuscript on vitamin D Vitamin D is used in reducing the incidence of congestive heart failure. So I am a very strong proponent of getting your vitamin D level up. Now, I do a lot of online health counseling. I do a lot of Zoom meetings with people. Without exception, all the people that I counsel with who have autoimmune disease, cancer, whatever, their vitamin D levels are low, very low. The doctors will tell you that around 30 is good, but that's not what he says, and it's not what we're finding in the research. Actually, more like 60 to 80 is more ideal, okay? And we're going to talk a little bit about how to get your levels up in just a minute. So I believe that sunshine is medicine, and it's the best medicine. Don't you just feel good when it's kind of chilly and you feel the sun hitting you? It feels good to the achy old bones. I know I'm not the only one. We talked a little bit about sunlight and depression. Sunlight actually triggers, we talked about beta endorphins in one of our other classes. It increases beta endorphins by 44%. That's why we feel better when we're outside. Okay? So how much sun do we need? According to Dr. Michael Hollick from Boston University, limited sun exposure of 5 to 10 minutes 3 times a week during the spring, summer, and fall, during the midday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., this is basically around solar noon, should be enough for most individuals. Personally, I'd like to see a little bit more sun exposure than that. You know, I believe that we need to aim toward a more outdoor life because I believe that's better for us. But the farther north you live, where are we? North Dakota. I mean, we're nearly Canadians up here, right? So we're going to talk about that in these northern latitudes. Vitamin D production stops completely in the winter. You cannot make any in the winter. And in the summer months, I think it's here from like late April or May through maybe early October that you can make vitamin D. So if you're above the 37 degrees north, and some people actually say it's like 31 degrees, then you can't really make vitamin D in the winter. So you need to get out in the summer and get exposed. Here is that line, that dividing line. So basically, if you live north of Tennessee, and I used to live in Kentucky, you cannot get vitamin D in the wintertime. So you need to make sure that you're getting it in the summer. And the reason for that is that your body can store vitamin D. Even so, the further north you live, your winters are longer, your summers are shorter. So you're going to still be deficient by the time winter's over. So you will need to take
That's why Alaska, up in Alaska.
Yes.
In the wintertime, it's
that's
a couple
right.
hours of light and then
Exactly.
dark.
And what else is Alaska known for? Depression, exactly.
That's why there's a lot of drinking and everything else.
That's right. Well, let me show you, since you brought that up, I want to show you a couple of devices that can help, okay? This is a red light device, and it is therapeutic. I actually have grown a little hair on Kaylin's head using this. This is actually designed for a knee, that it fits kind of like this. And you turn it on, and you see it's pretty bright there.
Maybe on this side or this side of Delilah. Can't see.
You can't see? Okay.
She's up in there. Just need to make sure you're.
I didn't know Delilah was tall enough to block anybody's vision. Okay, so this is a red light device, and I have actually used this. There's a lot of research with it now that it helps to stimulate hair growth, and so people are everywhere. I mean, they're making helmets and caps and all kind of stuff with the red lights like that. But here in North Dakota, what I think would be a really good idea for all of us, y'all, because I'm not here in the winter, I go south, This is a sun lamp. And this is actually vintage. It's probably like from the 80s. And that's painful to say. I graduated in the 80s, you know. Vintage from the 80s. But anyway, this is a sun lamp, full spectrum light. It's a 275 watt bulb of full spectrum. So you're going to get the near infrared, the heat, all that, all the spectrums of the visible light, the UVB, UVA, and the ultraviolet. I mean the red light and all those that are above that. So I'm going to turn this on, and you're going to see how amazingly bright this thing is. That you have to cover your eyes when you use that. But as soon as I turned this thing on, I felt the heat even back here. That's infrared. You can't see that, but you can feel it. This will produce vitamin D. This will, like whenever I used to work in the newborn nursery, and we would have ladies that had tears when they delivered their baby, we would put heat lamps, shine it on their perineum, and it was amazing, the pain relief and the speed up, how it sped up their healing. I mean, you can use this device. I bought this on eBay. I think I paid $50 for this. And I got 2 of them because I can't always have sunlight. And when I'm hurting, I still have some issues with pain, depending on where I'm at. If it's cloudy and stuff, I tend to have more pain. I can turn this on. I can make vitamin D. I can have that infrared light that is healing. So I really would recommend that folks who live in the northern areas invest in one of these. And this is not the only kind, but this is a kind. Yes?
Did you say that that's a 275 watts?
Yeah, and it's incandescent. I don't think you can get the 275 watt bulb, so look for one of these that still has the bulb in it. I found both of mine on eBay. And one of them has a little short, but Kaylin can fix that. And this one works fine, and it's got a timer on it. So you can actually set the timer, cover your eyes. Please cover your eyes. I mean, that thing is bright. But it's very, very beneficial if you're in an area that has short days in the winter time, and you're not getting that exposure. So this is another way that you can supplement in order to get your vitamin D.
So is it called a sun lamp?
It's called a sun lamp. Mm-hmm. It may actually have, let me get my glasses here and see. It may actually have, and there are other kinds. Yeah, it's called Sun Lamp, manufactured by GE. And it's got a little doodad on it. I just noticed that you could actually hang it. I just noticed that. And it's got a thing that you could actually mount it on the wall, like on a screw or something. And it also has a wing nut here, so you can adjust it however you need. So. Yes. Yeah, you can get one of those chicken lights. That would work too. Even the red lights that they use, I think they put that at night on chickens to keep them from beating one another up. You can even use those. Those red lights are very, beneficial. So yeah.
So you cover your eyes and just let it.
Yeah, you can, and you know what? Well, you don't have to do it on your face. You can even do it on your chest. Like if you have a chest cold, use this. It's a therapy. It's a treatment. This is a treatment. Okay? If you have someone who has liver gallbladder problems, put it on the liver gallbladder, stomach, and intestinal issues, kidney issues, put it on the back. Okay? It's a very good therapy. What's that?
I used it on my hip.
On your hip. Yeah, for hip pain. Yeah, it goes deep because you've got that infrared light. So that, again, is 8 centimeters. Let's see, how many inches is that? You got your hand up?
I was
Yes.
just going to say, like you always tell us with all of these classes, the life of the flesh is in the blood.
Yes,
That heat dilates
that's right.
your vessels and brings more healing to the area.
Yes.
That's the purpose.
All the benefits that we just talked about, the increase nitric oxide, the increase of melatonin, the increase of serotonin, all these things are here. You can get this, okay? I recommend going out in the sun. If I had a private place on my mother's farm to lay out, I would not have tan lines. I would expose all of me to, but I'm not brave enough to do that, so yes.
I was going to say, from everything you've shared with us, it seems to me to get the sunlight and the diet, have a garden.
Yes, have a garden. And then you're getting also what we talked about before, exercise. And you're going to be sweating, so you're going to be drinking lots of water. So here's some natural helpers. When we're exposing to sunlight, we want to do things to protect our skin. This will help. An antioxidant-rich diet. Lots of vitamin C, omega-3 fatty acids. Somebody name me some omega-3 fatty acids. Chia seeds. Walnuts.
Flax oil.
What's that?
Flax oil.
Flax, yes. Flax is a good one. Chia, flax. Some people use hemp hearts, walnuts. Some people use fish oils, but
Avocados, 3 or 6?
Avocados are not an omega-3. Yeah, I don't know if I don't think they're a 6 either. I don't remember. Anyway, vitamin E. No animal fats in the diet because, again, the animal fats increase the risk of skin cancer. Adequate exercise and water consumption, and hats and sleeves. Jesus said, I am the light of the world, John 9:5. And so as we expose ourselves to Him, there's healing. And as we expose ourselves to His sunlight, there's healing.